Manana Sijus, para todos Hamzu, and welcome to your Guam Congress building. The Committee on Finance and Government Operations is now called to order at 0906, and it is June 19, 2025. First notice of this public hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on June 12, 2025, with its second notice disseminated on June 16, 2025. The hearing notices were also made available on the Guam Legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. The committee will now hear Bill number 44-38 COR, introduced by the Committee on Rules by the request of Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriations for the operations of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30, 2026, and making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions. Today, we are joined by the Department of Administration. Joining me for this budget hearing is Senator Sean Gumatauto. Thank you, Senator. Senator Talo Taidagui and Senator Chris Barnett. Thank you, Senators. Those testifying on Bill number 4438 COR relative to the Department of Administration, DOA, please take a seat at the hearing table, and you've already done that. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of the Legislature in Guåhan's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall be first recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance and nature of the bill on the agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying are not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order removal from the hearing of any member of the Legislature in Guåhan or the public audience who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 38th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. As is customary, as you know, when we do discussions about finances, we swear in the members of the panel. So I'm going to ask the member of the panel to please rise and be sworn in by the Sergeant at Arms.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Mr. Chair, on the oath, you may proceed.
Thank you. And of course, this morning we have our Director, Department of Administration, Mr. Edward Byrne. Mr. Byrne, my format that I've been following for budget hearings is to have the director or the executive of the agency or department to introduce themselves, introduce the panel, and let us know, the senators know whether or not they'll be testifying or they're here in support of the department for any questions from the panel. So it's your show, basically, as the director to provide the opening with your team, and then we'll go from there. So this time I recognize you, Director Byrne. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators, and thank you for the opportunity for us to actually showcase the activities of the Department of Administration, which isn't always obvious to people because we work in the back office, as it were. We work in the background trying to make the wheels of government work. With me on my right is Teresa Rivers, CFO, who will be taking you through the slides that we brought this morning. And on my left is Andy Kittiker, who's the Acting Chief Procurement Officer, who will be here to answer any questions that you might have on procurement and the activities of GSA, because GSA does other activities other than procurement. So if I may, I'll ask Ms. Rivers to open up by taking us through the slide deck. And please allow me to make comments as we go through if I feel that it would be helpful to you and the panel to expand on any of the points here.
That sounds like a great plan, Director. Please proceed.
So we wanted to first share with...
Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Teresa Rivers. I'm the CFO. I've been with the department for almost 2 years now. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and share with you what we're doing to help manage the financials for the government. So what we wanted to share this morning first is to share with you some of the priorities we focus on in 2025 and some of the challenges that we faced, and also then provide you with our ask for the 2026 financial year. So one of the first things that we were focusing on this year, as there was a lot of, discussions on the implementation of the new system, is to look at improving the financials monitoring tools so we can work with the agencies to better manage the spending on the general fund. So one of the first key priority was improving the financial monitoring tools with the introduction of the budget versus actuals reporting for all line agencies for the general fund expenses. So we've initiated that report. We've started sending out the monthly updates to the agency directors, and we've also asked for feedback from them on how we can, I know sometimes there may be costs that we haven't factored in or we haven't received, the journal entries from the various agencies, or transactions, are yet to be posted. So we receive feedback, and we ask for feedback because sometimes we're working through a new system, and and there are things that we're improving on that. So we've received some positive feedback and constructive feedback, and we're improving the process as a result. So we have a sample of that report in one of the slides, and hopefully we're able to expand on that later on. So one of the positives there is we also help agencies to help us get their payments processed on time. So if they don't see expenses in their budget for the month, they can call us out and say, we've submitted these invoices, have you processed them? And it has been a challenging process, but we're working through that with information that we share. The other priority that we were working on is to try and reduce the manual work that we do in processing of income tax checks, which is a huge undertaking in the beginning, towards the end of the year, and the beginning of the year, as we are aware. So we worked collectively with the Department of DRT, the revenue team, to implement a micro-encoded check capability for the income tax checks. This means that our team, the manual movement of the checks from one department to another, including the stamping of the signatures, we no longer need to do that. That is all done electronically in a secured manner. So that has helped our team reduce also the risks involved with the exchange and the manual exchange, together with DRT's support. The other priority, as again, there have been feedback on improvement on our procurement process. So one of the key focus Andy and her team worked on is the re-centralization of the procurement, to enhance compliance, standardization, and purchasing effectiveness across departments. And I'm sure she will expand on that later on. One other priority as well is on the procurement side is modernizing of surplus property and inventory management through the establishment of tracking systems, increased reuse across departments, expansion of surplus sales, and improved purchasing of supplies for the government store to maximize value and reduce waste. We also looked at implementing a paperless personal action approach, as some of the agencies are already using that, as well as our payroll process. We do have a number of agencies that have yet to, we're still working on migrating the remaining agencies to the new payroll process. We are working through feedback on how we can improve on the process, but it's been stabilized, and we're targeting to make sure all of the agencies are in the new system, hopefully by the end of this quarter or next quarter. Again, we've got to work with agency support on this. The other priority that we worked on is, better utilizing of the new system and listening to feedback from the users and taking that on board and raising service requests to resolve issues and then look at improving the process. The last two key priorities focus on the self-insurance program, and this is focusing on the multi-year contracting for the third-party administration, also proper medical enrollment of Medicare eligible and non-Medicare eligible subscribers. Those are some of the priorities. There are a lot, but we try to focus on the key items that improve the services that we provide and better management of our financials. Some of the challenges that we're facing and continue to work to improve on is as we centralize the procurement process, this increases the staff workload in the procurement space, and and allocating those resources should improve the turnaround time, and we're working to improve on that. One other challenge is the achievement of a unified digital records management remains a key challenge as we strive to improve accessibility, strengthen data security, and meet compliance requirements across all departments. Another challenge that we were working on resolving is, a data cleanse and migration of the government of Guam's general ledger accounts when we migrated to the new system, and this involved close to 5,000 accounts with large balances. Another challenge we're facing is the management of the federal grants for the government with the new additional requirements, which involves robust, requests from the grantors to justify expenditures. And this is also, at the same time, we've got restricted hours to access the various portals that we use to access these grants. Another challenge we're facing is, continued efforts by the Department of Administration to work with line agencies to better manage the payments process end-to-end, what they can help them with, obviously the procurement process as well as the recruitment process. Timely and accurate reporting from agencies regarding insurance enrollment and terminations. This is again in regards to the self-insurance program. And obviously centralization of insurance processing of defined contribution retirees and survivors. So those are some of the challenges, not all of them, but those are the key ones that stand out in 2025 that we're continuing to work on. I understand that we would also want to provide an update on the audit. The background on, I know we came a few months ago to provide a reason why the audit was delayed. So yes, completion of the audit for 2023 was really majorly impacted by the GDOE audit completion. The GDOE financials are part of the general fund. There were also challenges in reporting agencies to completing the federal compliance audit required by the federal government to be part of the overall audit submission for federal agencies. And further delays are being experienced at the moment at GDOE, resulting in further delays of the government's 2024 audit. So therefore, the audit for 2024 is not expected to be completed until the end of November 2025. I will stop there. Sir, did you want to pass it over to my boss to?
If I could just expand on this issue of DOE being part of the general fund. There are some 5 agencies which are self-accounting but part of the general fund. And it's kind of frustrating that we are dependent on all of those. 4 of them are fairly small, including the legislature, that it doesn't really impact the general fund that much, whatever the result is. But DOE clearly does. There's millions of dollars going through. And so it's almost impossible for us to forecast what the balance of the general fund will be without good information, and good information is not flowing from DOE. I know you senators have had a number of discussions with DOE about how they're managed, and I don't really want to get too involved in that. I'm just concerned about the quality and the timeliness of the financial information that we need in order to complete our accounting for the general fund.
So I want to address that, Mr. Edward Byrne. I had a conversation with the OPA over the weekend. Speaker B.J. Cruz, he's extremely exasperated and angry, actually, at this perennial issue with DOE. We understand that that's the best they're going to do is to get to November 2025, which is really, in my opinion, completely unacceptable. There probably will be some proposals forthcoming, perhaps even to include, and I want to get your comment on this, maybe reinstating DOA as a managing partner in terms of accounting. Can you comment on that?
Yes, sir, I can, because he spoke to me about that personally too. And reluctant though we might be, initially to take on additional tasks, not knowing the quality of the information that we're going to be faced with, in order to get to a result, I agreed that we probably would have to assume this burden. There are some apparent legal issues as to whether that can be quickly done or not quickly done, and I believe that I'm having a meeting with the Governor's Legal Counsel tomorrow about that issue.
So I want to also welcome the Vice Speaker and the Vice Chair of this committee, Senator Tony Yata. Thank you for being here, as well as Senator Therese Jalai. So, yeah, I just have to say that, and maybe Senator Yata, Vice Speaker Yata, will expand through some of his commentary on his recent visit to Washington, D.C. But yeah, there was a number of findings with their visit, and I'll leave that to him and the other senators. And it's obvious that one of the major issues with DOE is their financial management. This is one of the reasons, I'll just say this publicly because I know that this has been out there in terms of, are we helping or not helping? We are helping, to include yourself, Director Byrne, to include BBMR, to include OFB. The meetings that we've been having on financial matters have been very open and very frank in terms of their management of their cash and how that intersects with the reconciliation and the management of federal grants. I can tell you right now, just our oversight on the issue of the money they lost on the $27 million, I believe, prompted their ability to at least recover that $9 million because of the microscope that was put on that. So sometimes people need to understand within these large agencies expressly, it's not a money problem, it's a money management problem. And so that'll be coming out as we go down the road. But thank you for putting on the record along with me, coming from the OPA, that something significant and serious has to happen in terms of the management, the fiscal management within Guam Department of Education. And that will affect everything from reporting with grants, probably getting a lot more success in terms of expenditure of grants, and also accountability in terms of how we continue to receive money going forward. But I'm glad you put that in your audit. So, Ed, this basically means then we'll probably not be able to have a draft in June of at least a snapshot. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So outside of DOE, you said the smaller entities, to include us, you don't believe would really affect in a manner to which it would be too far off to have predicted. So other than that, I've been seeing the audits come out from the public auditor and the like. So other than that, it's pretty clean in terms of compliance with all the other entities for the big audit.
Yes, I mean, other than I think now 2 of the charter schools, all the government entities or entities that are associated with the government have had unmodified audit reports. And that's a record, obviously, we intend to maintain as firmly as we can. We've not had a modified audit report, a qualified one, in the central government for over 12 years, I believe. And, you know, as you may well be aware, there's a team, including me, going to New York next week to get a bond rating from Moody's on our refunding of the BPT bonds that now become available for refunding so that we can get a more attractive interest rate out of it. And one of the successes that we've certainly had with Moody's, and they generally mention it in their reports when they finally produce their ratings report, is improved financial control. And in no way does the government want to loosen or have any loosening or deterioration in the financial control, because that is one of the things that they quoted as being an achievement and one of the factors that permitted them to value our debt at investment grade. So anything that endangers that, we obviously want to deal with.
Okay. Ed, I just think it's important at this point, before I go to the table and of basically the budget presentation, you might have a couple more slides here, but I wanted to just get this on the record real quick too, because it's probably the highlight to me of the presentation, and that is in terms of your preliminary on the expenditures and actuals, how is that being realized, and how is it tracking, and how is it helping the agencies and you in terms of cash management?
Well, we started issuing these new reports in January, and then we had some catch-up to do. So since March, I think they've been fairly consistent. Would you agree? Yeah. We are getting some comments back from agencies, as the CFA mentioned. It's, to my mind, it's that dialogue, which we really didn't have before because we had no document with which to center a dialogue, is really critical. And some of the, unfortunately, I couldn't listen to right the way through every agency that sat in these chairs up to now. But the issues of prior year obligations certainly has come up several times, and we're trying to deal with that in a more consistent way. But also the way agencies expend their funds. Right? Some of them tend to wait until the last minute, unsure of how much funds they're going to be able to spend. And of course, that's not a very efficient way of spending funds, because you're doing it in a rush. GSA probably is pressured because they're doing it in a rush. And accounting is also pressured because all of a sudden we find, you know, double the amount or triple the amount of invoices being presented, rather than have a more measured presentation of invoices. So this kind of discussion we certainly want to encourage, and bit by bit, you know, we're getting that ability to talk to agency directors about that. We haven't got through them all yet, but we're working on that.
So other than cash management, it's more of a smoothing out, really. And that, I've gotten some comments. I gotta strike while iron's hot on this, Mr. Byrne, that some of the function of their expenditure is the allotment management. And so I think that's one thing to keep an eye on too, because allotment management and the restrictions. So they kind of have to know, sometimes they're told they got to get their invoices in by June or even earlier sometimes. Other than that, it's going to be difficult for considerations, and they still have, 4.5 months left of the fiscal year. So that, if that's at the front end of the year, I can understand it, but towards the back end, some comments that I've been getting is it's allotment control and also in terms of restrictions.
We want agencies to have some confidence in their budgets. It's this tendency to be concerned that they're either going to overspend or underspend that causes this imbalance in the way they manage their budgets. And that's just practice. In my experience, over the years in different types of businesses, you've got to understand and be confident that the figures that you're budgeting with are good numbers, and then you can start to more efficiently deal with the obligations that you need to put in place to manage your department. And you can't do that all in the last 2 months. That doesn't work.
Kate, are you going to continue with the presentation?
Well, we just have one more slide, I think, that we want to show you, which is the comparison of the budget with last year and this year and our expenditure to date. And what I've done, if I could draw your attention to it, for the fiscal 25 executive budget request and the fiscal 26 executive budget request, I pulled out some of the fringes, because I know you've been discussing this in previous hearings. So you can see not only the change in salaries, but also the increase in the different elements that make up the fringe benefits. And as you can see, I guess the biggest change, there's obviously the change in volume because we're asking for more positions to complete our task. So there's a volume change in here, but there's also a quality change in the retirement in the retirement fund and the medical health insurance contribution increase. So I thought that might be helpful to you, because I don't believe you've probably seen it this way before.
No, but there was some creative stuff done also within OFB, so I'm going to draw the attention to the spreadsheet before I go to the panel, go to our panel members, our senators. But yes, this is nice that it's done in this detail. So I guess while we're on it, I'll just ask you, so other than the additional warm bodies, were those budgeted vacancies that you already had, or are these new, are you now implementing more budgeted vacancies?
We had some personnel disruptions in the agency, but we've got fully staffed at a high level now. So now we're trying to fill those really needed vacancies. Accounting is busy trying to fill some vacancies, accountant ones and accountant twos, and HR is filling some vacancies at PS ones and PS twos. GSA, I think you have 8 buyers now? 5 buyers. But how many vacancies? 1 or 2?
Andriana Kitako, acting CPO. We have 2 vacancies right now, one for a buyer supervisor 2 and one for a buyer 1. This is from our budgeted for this FY.
Budgeted, okay. So I don't know that I see it broken out here. I think this will be probably the question other than personnel is the benefits. Do you have a grand total for benefits inclusive of your retirement as well as insurance, health insurance?
Yeah. I'm sorry, are you asking us? It's those 3 items, the total of those 3 items is the benefits.
Okay.
So it would be 3.7 million. Right?
Okay. Okay, so for senators, please direct your attention to the the summary by division, 2026, it may look like sticker shock from the fiscal year 2024, 10.3 million to authorized level at 19,824,392 in 2025, and the request of 19,463,357. The reason for that is, if you go back to your left, you'll see that for the 2024, the special funds were not included. And so when you're looking at that number, you have to, when you're actually looking for the agency request in terms of operations, you need to look under subtotal operations. That is the variance of $2 million. Actually, I'm sorry. The variance is going to be the 349058. And that is, so that's for actually their budget. Of course, their budget includes special funds, but now in the 25 authorization level and the 26 request, you can see that all of the special funds are enumerated there. Of course, one of the big ticket items is the $7,101,000 on the GFMIS contract in 2025, and that now turns into $3,876,575 in 2026. So, Mr. Byrne, I guess other than the audit, one of the key questions yesterday with Rev and Tax was they were, pointing out as well the success of the conversion in terms of how you're preparing the check right, and you enumerated that in your opening. The question was whether or not, now that it's become more efficient, the 6-week distribution record, the pace that they're on right now, if it could be earlier, is that because of Department of Administration in terms of their distribution and their in processes, or is it based on you're getting it out essentially as the information comes to you?
Yes, Senator. Basically, we are. We're getting it out now within 3 to 4 days.
That's your turnaround.
Actually getting the information at DOA. Okay. We still have to print out all those checks because there's only like 15 to 20% of taxpayers who consent to be paid electronically. But it takes about less than a day to print them out, and then we physically have to take them to the main postal facility to get them in the mail. But we rely, honestly, on having the information from Rev and Tax, and I know they're working really hard at it because they've got out the majority of the refunds already, which is commendable.
Yeah, so once again, if some of our public is watching and they didn't catch yesterday, because I know this is a high public interest, they mentioned that, of course, on the front end of those who are filing, you normally get the heaviest load of people who are expecting refunds. And so they usually have a logjam in processing in the beginning, but their comment now is that they're into that time frame where the volume starts to go down. So they're anticipating it even getting closer in date to the 1 month, 30-day turnaround. But for the record, DOA is telling us that their turnaround time is 3 to 4 days once they receive the information of the processed tax refund.
Yes, sir, and I believe that we've actually been able to issue over 100 million in tax refunds in respect of 2024 tax returns.
I guess my other question, Mr. Byrne, on the request, as you know, you've been dealing with BBMR and myself, in fact, representing BBMR from time to time, that we're going to be tight this year. And we're looking at most agencies at a status quo budget. One thing I notice that jumps out is part of your request in terms of your increase. How does that level out with the change in the contractual obligation on GFMIS when it's basically almost $3 million less? It seems to correlate.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. The GFMIS contract, that was basically envisaged as a 5-year contract with the heavy payments in the early years, because that was when the bulk of the work was to be done by the vendor to establish the system. So as we get through the contract, there is a decrease in the payments that we need to make until we get to the point where there is only a maintenance payment to keep the system going. Having said that, we are looking really seriously at the parts of the system that aren't on, that still are on the old database, basically, which affect us. And those two parts are the information that we get from public health, and they're already looking at upgrading their system. So we're not going to involve ourselves with that unless they need our help, so long as we get the information into our system in a timely and efficient way. But the revenue part of the system is still on the AS400, and we seriously think that it will be a complete benefit to both DRT and DOA and the government finances if we were to upgrade that system too. We're looking at how to finance that. We have a proposal from the vendor, and which we're looking at to determine how much of it we really need as to how much is being quoted. But we will be, in due course, asking you to hear our proposals for upgrading those systems, which affects the DOA non-tax receipts and the DRT tax receipt systems.
So I've been made to understand you're still using that vendor, right? And because
Yes.
you need to from time to time in order to maintain that system?
We're using the old system for the revenue recording.
Correct.
And we have to pull the information out of that and put it into the new system in order to prepare the financials.
And that was part of a planned parallel run?
Yes, that was always part of the plan. We didn't try to deal with, because of the interface with DRT, who are, at the time that we were doing this, were also concerned about the way that their system was being maintained. But now they've reached some stability, we've reached some stability, now we're looking at filling in that gap.
Yeah, that's what I've been made to understand, but I think their proposal is pretty, in terms of the upgrades required and needed, I believe they're in line with what you're looking for, correct?
Well, I had to go down to Reverend Tax the other day to help my wife with something, and it was like looking back in the past, seeing people not using a mouse and pressing the F buttons on the top. So that's what really brought it to light.
That's what I understand as well, because the legacy really is still maintained by other operations, and they seem to be okay. Well, it's part of the process, and I'm glad because that did come to my attention as your oversight, and so I'm glad that it's being addressed. And my team did meet with the vendor and basically got some information in terms of what's going on. So it's good to know that everybody's communicating. That's a big deal because this system is so critical to what we do. I guess my final question is, does this fit within the ceiling in terms of the governor's request?
No, it would be in addition to the contract because it wasn't contemplated at the very beginning.
No, but I mean your actual proposal in your budget request right now.
No, that probably wouldn't affect fiscal 26.
Right.
Although if it did, at the tail end, we would want to come to you to discuss.
So I've shifted back to your request right now. Is your request in line with the governor's ceiling?
This request, yes.
This request is?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on to our senators for their line of questioning as well. Andy, did you have anything that you wanted to make as part of the presentation?
No, Teresa pretty much covered it.
Okay. I hear some good news over there at GSA, though, so keep up the good work, and the buyers are happy, and so keep doing what you're doing. I think you're probably going to get some legislation here soon, though, and that you'll be commenting on that might help you with what you're doing. So, but that's a later time. Anyways, Andy, thank you, and I'm sure that the senators may have questions for you. Vice Speaker Anna, and Vice Chair of the committee, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Burton, you guys have any outstanding vendor payables?
Thank you, Vice Speaker. There will always be outstanding
I understand
bills. So I was commenting we had a meeting about this about a couple of weeks ago, and when I first took this position, the outstanding vendor payables were about 41 million. When we ran the report for this meeting, it was something just over 4 million.
So we still have about 4 million in vendor payables?
Yes, but can I please qualify that's what we know about. We are aware that some agencies have not been submitting invoices. Some of that has come out in the hearings that you've been having. So we have been as we heard about it, we've been in contact with those agencies to submit their invoices.
Okay, that's good to hear, as long as they start submitting it and we start getting these vendors paid, right? You know, I heard also earlier that you guys have 5 buyers on board now and only 2 vacancies, one for buyer 1 and a supervisor as well, right? So, and I think that's where the backup is with a lot of, you know, like the chairman has said, I just returned from DC, and a lot of federal funds that's being returned is because of the fact that they're not being expended. And it seems like the holdup is the procurement. And I guess going out to having these funds expended, I mean, where are we at now, and how quickly are we processing requests for purchase orders and things like that? And have we increased our productivity? And
yes, and I'll ask Andy to comment in a minute, if I may. But generally, yes. We are aware, you know, that some of these procurements are complex, right? The procurement for electric school buses kind of didn't move forward because some of the specs were unclear, and then one of the bidders went out of business, and so that didn't help the whole thing. That's just circumstance that we have to deal with, and that is one of the things that certainly would prevent the expenditure of the federal funds. Some of the, you know, is what I was talking about earlier, is agencies wait until late in the year to present their requisitions, and then GSA is faced with a lot of requisitions at the end of the year to process, and that's not an efficient way of operating. You know, the budget law asks agencies to submit their procurement plan at the beginning of the year. Not many of them do that, and those that do don't necessarily adhere to that. So it's another thing that we're going to operate on during the course of the remainder of this year, and critically the beginning of the next financial year. But certainly we are concerned about failed procurements. That you know, it's a lot of effort, and if it fails, basically we have to start again.
yeah.
I'll go ahead and comment about this fiscal year alone. We did receive over 2,000 requisitions, and that's just as of May. 100 of those are for invitation for bids and for request for proposals, and so these are very complex services sometimes, and so a lot of it is what we're trying to do now at GSA is really own our specs and really ensure that what we're asking for is really what we need, and it's compatible with the agency's services and what they service the public. And so yes, I think since I've been there, there has been some talk about the turnaround time. We are trying to improve that. A good turnaround time for an easy procurement, I try to do 15 to 30 days. But a lot of it is that I don't rubber stamp some of the procurement that comes in. I'm an auditor by trade, so I do really thoroughly review before I sign a purchase order. And it's really just to ensure that we're compliant with not just the Guam procurement law, but also federal laws, and the auditors don't come back and have findings on some of these procurements.
So, I understand that, I guess when the fiscal year opens up and they start submitting, that you don't take submissions until October or November?
So during the time that the fiscal year closes, we do close the procurement realm. This FY, we did open it in October, but prior to that, when an agency has like a critical need, I do take it in and we do a manual process outside of the system to ensure that they get a purchase order. For those that are received in October, because that is our slower month, the turnaround time was faster. It was about 10 days after we received a requisition. That has changed because of the volume that has come in since. And so a lot of times it's just us reaching out to the agencies and them also talking to us about their critical needs, and we work with them to process, even when the system is closed for processing.
So does the agencies get an update status as to when, is there like a tracking, once they submit their procurement or their purchase orders and such, that you guys get back to them as to what the status is on that?
Yes, so a lot of times they do email us about statuses because they have funding that may be running out, or there's a critical need and something might be broken and they need to attend to it now. And so we do email back, we do answer our phones and let them know the status. But every time a purchase order is signed, we actually electronically send it. And so when we send it to the vendor, we copy the agency's POC so that they have a copy.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Okay. You know, Mr. Byrne, the other issue that was brought up to me in DC was that, I guess, establishing of accounts. So, for example, this one, the agency administration for Native Americans had mentioned that a grant was already given, I think in 2023, and drawdown, it was a $300,000 grant. They already drew, $200,000 was drawn down, and they still had $100,000 remaining that is set to expire in September. And they said that, I guess, between DOA and BBMR about establishing an account for that additional $100,000. Do you know about that?
No, we don't have a whole lot of grants from that particular agency. We'll certainly look at that. The establishment of an account is the responsibility. Well, we're looking at the whole system because of some of the things that you mentioned, but the current process is that it's the responsibility of the agency to whom the grant is awarded to set up or to initiate the paperwork for the account. When it comes to us, I think we take no more than, I would say, two days to establish an account. So we rely upon that, but we are looking at the order in which the steps are taken, because I don't think the current system does tend to slow things down until it gets to us. And if we have a question because of something that happened, and that does happen from time to time, then we have to go back all the way to the beginning again. So we are looking at that. We obviously don't want to have unspent grants.
So do you guys have any federal grants to DOA?
We don't have any operational federal grants, no.
Okay. That's good to hear, and that way you don't have to worry about about returning any federal funds.
Well, I would like some federal grants. In fact, I was thinking of applying for a technical grant, TAP grant, for that extension of the system.
Well, you know, speaking of TAP grants, we did meet with Interior Office of Insular Affairs, and you know, perhaps you can reach out to them as well and see what TAP grants are available with them.
I will be seeing them at the GFOA meeting in Washington next week, so I certainly will.
Oh, that's great to hear, and I think also they'll be coming out this way again in July, so perhaps if they stop by, Mr. Hagan, Principal Deputy Secretary Hagan stops by, please reach out to him. He said anything that he can help us with, he's willing to help. We just need to make sure that we apply for these things that are given to the island and expend it. And what they don't want to see is the return of federal funds, because it goes back to Treasury and then it goes to somewhere else, and that's what they don't want.
He told me that he would be at that meeting, so I certainly will talk to him.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Mr. Byrne, for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's the only question I have at this time. Thank you.
Excuse me, Vice Speaker and Vice Chair of the committee. And once again, thank you for leading the delegation, and thank you for the delegation paying their own way. I think we cannot overstate that. So that was a great service that you and the team provided to the people of Guam. Senator Gumatato, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, DOA, for being here, and thank you, Mr. Byrne, for leading the presentation today. A few questions, if I could. Let me start with the office lease for DOA. Your budget includes a request for $851,424. It's a little bit more than last year. For the benefit of the committee and members of the public who are following today's budget hearing, what's the reason for the increase in your annual rent, or I guess your annual rent increase? What's the reason?
Two main reasons. The first one is obviously people. We can't operate as efficiently as we need to without people, and even fully staffing, as we discussed a little bit earlier, for fiscal 25. We've proposed some new positions in fiscal 26 in order better to carry out our mandate, because as all of you have pointed out, if something gets stuck, wherever it gets stuck, DOA has to pull it out. And that needs people, no matter how good a system you have. And like the Vice Speaker was asking about GSA and the progress, you can actually see it on the system to which point a process is reached. It still needs people to take that information and communicate with the agencies. It's no, I don't think it's a secret that agency turnover is an issue. DOA fortunately doesn't really have that issue, but the financial people in the agencies there is an extreme amount of turnover in that area, and we end up with ASOs who are inexperienced, and that is a matter of concern to us. We have ASO training, but it's only once a year, and we certainly need to do it more frequently, but it's really hard to keep up with that turnover. And so we need more people at DOA to offer that particular service.
So, and which is kind of let me just continue on that line then. On the subject of your facility needs, what specific efforts have been made by your agency during this last fiscal year to secure maybe a new location or co-locate with other agencies which could accommodate some of your space requirements, as you say, as you're growing? I know you're just not growing and contracting, but as you're growing.
Yes, thank you. We have thought about that. We now have a property manager at DOA whose mandate is to look at all the properties that the government has, and they're basically all over the place. DOA has been at the ITC building for a number of years, and there is certainly the possibility that we might grow out of that. So there are some proposals to bulk rent government space. However, as you probably heard from public health, who desperately need new space because they're scattered more than we are, it's very hard to find the ideal amount of premises, and DRT are having that issue too, is that really there aren't many available spaces at the moment that would accommodate all these agencies and co-locate them. I do see, we've had some federal or previously occupied by federal agencies opened up, but they're really small spaces and not really available. for what you're asking.
Yeah, perhaps maybe a school or two might be helpful too, so I just thought I'd throw it out there for the sake of conversation. Let's talk a little bit about the health actuarial consulting contract. What information can you share with the public, or what can be disclosed regarding the substantial increase for health actuarial contractual costs, which adjusted from $433,333 in FY25 to $716,000 in FY26? And for the record, are the increased costs absorbed in any way by taxpayers through a higher employer share for medical benefits?
Well, let me answer the first part first. The increase in the contract is because we're asking them to do more and more. The traditional contract was just to, under the old model of insurance acquisition, was merely to measure the bids and report out on the conclusion. We're asking them to do more things. They're doing audits on, in fact, they've got an audit ongoing at the moment with the medical providers. We're asking them to look into whether we should subscribe to Medicare Part D in order to reduce our pharmacy costs, and that we have to do in January, because that's when the actual Medicare subscribers do it, because that would be a good way, if it works, of reducing our pharmacy costs. We have to deal with how we deal with the $2,000 deductible, and that's one of the things they're looking into. And beyond that, we are asking them to do more and more. They're giving, all costs have gone up, and they're giving us a professional, I'm really pleased with Milliman's performance.
Okay, and I'm just hoping that we don't look at this self-insurance as like we're looking at a private company like we used to in the past. If we're the insurer, I'm hoping we just make it a little bit more simpler so that things are, at least when it translates back to our employees, that they're getting a better, better service versus, I know that we've been thinking about it so differently, but just kind of refocusing us on what it really is. We're self-insuring. We're not doing anything else here. And can I ask you about your credit card convenience fees? What portion of the payments that are received by the treasurer in fiscal 24 were made through credit cards? And to what extent is DOA consulted with our friends at the Guam Power Authority or the Guam Waterworks Authority during this current fiscal year, recognizing that residential rate payers do not pay a convenience fee, presumably, because the fee is built into each billing?
Sorry, sir, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Okay, so have you guys consulted with GPA, GWA, recognize this is through your payments through credit cards? And
Well,
can you help us with this idea of the convenience fee?
Okay, I'll ask the CFO to deal with the statistical question you asked, but the second part of the question is, we actually receive some payments for GPA and GWA. Subscribers can pay their water bills and their power bills at Treasurer of Guam. We receive a large number of credit card payments, and when Treasurer receives it, they now have two machines, one that charges the fee for those that have to pay the fee, which is businesses basically, and another machine that doesn't charge the fee, which is for individuals, in order to comply with the law that was passed last year. The issue we've been having is with taxpayers who pay their taxes online, which is a DRT system, which we're working with DRT to resolve how we separate out into those two groups that we have been able to do in order to make sure that the right people pay and the right people don't pay. But GPA and GWA absorb their fees. we have to live within the law, which says we can only absorb some fees, and we're working with that.
Did you want to add? I'm sorry.
So the work that we've done, our TOG, Treasurer of Guam and her team have initially engaged with the various departments that are collecting and charging the services. So far they have been able to receive, so the portals or the terminals that are TOG utilize to receive payments for services that fall under the exempt fee. These have already been programmed to be, as the director mentioned, to not charge the fee. So all of the terminals, wherever they are set up in different locations, those are already switched on to not charge the fee. That was implemented, I believe, in March. So the process, all the charges that were charged for the personal payers outside of what's charged at the DRT portal, those are being reviewed and reimbursed. So as of May, about $150,000 worth of credit card fees charged to the payers, whether they paid their taxes or other services, have been refunded. So there are still more that we're working on, but it's a manual process. And I guess the engagement initially, we needed to work with different vendors, the vendor for DRT and the vendor for the bank, because all of the credit card processes are done electronically, and it's on one system talking to another system. So, and having to get the report to be able to identify which payers are, personal payers and which payers are business payers. So, in some cases, the personal credit cards are used to pay business taxes per se. So it's a very complex process to be able to identify what's a personal payer and then request to do the reimbursement. But once the terminals or the FPOS terminals at the TOG locations have been switched on, that does not require any further. It's just a refunding and giving the money, charging the right account to be reimbursed. But I hope I'm making sense.
No, you are, and
Yeah.
and I appreciate the answer. I think for many people that use these terminals or going in and make these payments, more and more people versus a check are going down this road, and so hence trying to find ways to help them cut costs.
Senator, if I could also add, we've been talking to the bank about direct debits to accounts, which is generally cheaper. The bank doesn't offer it for business customers at the moment, and we're a business customer, but they have assured us that they will I think in the fall. So we obviously want to work with them because that would be cheaper for the customer and for us.
Okay, got it. Just I have a couple more questions, Mr. Chair. Any outstanding payables to any of the public safety, emergency management agencies that you guys are foreseeing? I know that you mentioned to the Vice Speaker that you have about $4 million in outstanding payables, but any specifically to the public safety or emergency management agencies right now that you're aware of?
Nothing that stands out that we know of.
Okay, I'm hoping they'll find one that has the website for our Homeland Security and Civil Defense, because I mean, we're into the middle of the storm season, and no one has been able to access that website. So I'm hoping that the team can go and nudge them and say, pay your stuff on time, or at least give us the bill.
Yes, we will, and that's what we did with their access system.
Oh, I mean, that one was pretty big, but
Yes.
now their public-facing site, which all their information and the like is on there, is not even being accessible. So,
Yes, sir.
I mean, of a host of other things, obviously. Mr. Byrne, I want to have a couple questions as well, and I just wanted to ask about, you mentioned earlier engagement of the agencies relative to, making sure they're getting their invoices to you. Do you guys at the cabinet meeting even talk about this stuff? Because it sounds like it's like it goes in their ears, and then they're here saying, oh, I don't know, I have no clue, or I did, but I'm still waiting for payment. Do you guys talk about that in the cabinet meetings?
Yes, we do. Maybe, as you suggest, I think in your question, we should do so more.
Yeah, I think so.
Agency directors, to be fair, are very busy, and a problem isn't a problem until it becomes an emergency. Then we hear about it. We certainly want both DOA and BBMR want to encourage agencies, like I was saying, not to treat these issues as urgent issues, but routine issues. And some, to be fair, there are some agency directors that perhaps a bit more experienced recognize that.
Yeah,
yes,
and I'll agree, but I will say that you're just as busy as well. So,
yeah.
And it makes your staff even busier trying to process very late invoices and the like. I want to have one more question, Mr. Byrne, and this is regarding the entirety of this FMIS system. I know that everyone loves that AS400, but it's got to go at some point. Is there any move to merge and get the data off so that you can move into the 2025 with modern data? At what point? I know the judiciary is stuck too. When do you guys just say thank you very much? I know you say you want to upgrade. I get shocked that we even talk about upgrades when, quite frankly, we should be moving away from that and modernizing the rest of our data information systems.
Yes, that is what I meant by our proposal, was to move away from that. And I know public health is always trying to move away from that too. People are comfortable with the system, and maybe, putting in a new system hasn't been the easiest task I've had over the last few years.
Oh no, and I think we all appreciate that, and we can understand. But this one singular legacy system continues to be, for now almost 20 years now, it's become a problem just as we're trying to modernize, and we're still kind of stuck. I'm sure there's some practical uses today, but we've got to start to move on. And the amount of money that we're spending could be spent elsewhere. I'm certain of it.
Yes, I absolutely, entirely agree with you. The new FMIS system, I don't use the old system at all now. I only use the new system. Is, as you know, it's in the cloud. You can access it anywhere. You don't need any hardware. That's the modern way of doing things. I certainly would encourage all departments to move away. However, staff are reluctant sometimes, but we train them, we cajole them, we get them actually even into accounting to sit with us and move these things forward. So I share your concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Thank you, DOA. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, Senator Gumatauta. Senator Talo-Tadigui.
Good afternoon. Good morning to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and of course, good morning to everyone here from DOA. Thank you. It was you mentioned earlier about 4 million of unpaid receipts or payables out. But of that 4 million that you mentioned, how many of there are 120 days over?
I don't recall. I don't think it was much, but it was maybe 1 million.
So there are vendors out there who have not got paid over 120 days up to $1 million. Is there any reason why?
Oh, sure, there's a reason.
Okay.
We have no reason not to pay an invoice. Let me be clear about that. If there's an invoice there, the cash is there. There's absolutely no reason, if totally compliant, that an invoice shouldn't be paid. Very often, well, not very often, but in these instances, they're not compliant. Either the agency gave us wrong information, or the agency didn't have, and we've had this even last week, didn't give us the right budget information, or there are, and so in some cases, there's a defect by the vendor that needs to be fixed. So that amount is always rotating. It might be less now, or it might be more now, depending upon the particular invoices that we receive.
So, Mr. Byrne, then the 120 days, the counting of that by the vendor, is even if there is a issue or some information they did not provide or something that you said is needed, like all those excuses that you mentioned, right? Do you count that day from the time you let them know that this is a problem and we need this additional information, or the application was filled out wrong, or whatever the case may be? Do you start that timeline?
The aging starts at the date of the invoice.
The date of the invoice.
And again, if we don't get it, we can't put it into the system until we do get it.
So it could be delayed on DOA's side, and that clock starts to tick. If there is a delay there, it could be on DOA's side too as well.
It could be,
Yeah.
there could be many reasons, but as I said at the beginning, we have no reason not to pay an invoice. We have a reason to pay an invoice, that we have to move on to the next one.
Is there any of the 120-day invoices that need to be paid out are not being paid out because you don't have the funding?
There are some invoices that get stuck because the agency, and again, I'm going to ask the CFO to address this because she had to deal with this last week, or this week.
If you can, please. Yeah, thank you.
An example of what happens, right?
Okay. Well, I'm just asking a simple question. Of the 120-day vendors that are, haven't been paid out in 120 days, is any of them standing still because there is no funding to pay them? Not because they haven't met their requirements, but there's no money to pay them.
I don't have the exact details of if there is one out of the one, in the 120, that the reason for delay is
lack of payment.
Lack of budget.
Funds to pay them, yeah.
The experience that one of the experience we've had is providing the incorrect, getting the correct account details, and the account to use did not have sufficient budget, mainly because money was sitting in a different account, and there was incorrect information exchanged between the party on the agency and our team. So it's trying to work through understanding what account to be used and where the funding should come from. Right. So, also, including in that is the contract details. So if it's reliant on a contract, if this payment is based on an agreement in a contract, we also needed to make sure that the clauses in the contract are clearly understood and are compliant with the rules. So I hear what you're saying, ma'am. Yes, there are cases that there are invoices that are unpaid due to lack of information or...
no, I'm saying lack of funding.
Lack of funding, sorry. So there are cases that there are no funding at all.
Available.
Right. And we've had to help the agency look for funding or look at other ways, where are the which accounts they can utilize. And that's the case.
Could we get a report on that? Could we get a report on how many of those that are out there, the people that are owed? Okay.
We're actually
because of lack of funding.
It's lack of funding because generally a process like failed procurement. So.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that, Mr. Byrne. I'm talking about what she just told us, that there are cases. So I'm just looking for that.
Because the procurement didn't identify the funding.
Yeah, but I just asked her the question, and she said there are cases that 120 days had lapsed, and it's because there's no funding. It had nothing to do with the filling out the application. It's all in order. It's just that. So.
But it does, Senator. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, okay, I'll get a report on that, okay, and find out the explanation of these 120-day vendors who have not been paid yet and what the issue is.
We will be able to demonstrate that.
Okay, it's $4 million, up to $4 million. Speaking of your
No, sorry, that's the total outstanding invoices.
Right, I understand.
Not the 120-day invoices.
No, I know, it's $4 million, yeah, still, we can follow through with that and find out what's happening with this, see if there's some kind of trend that's going on here. Regarding your contract, your office space that was mentioned earlier, it had gone up, and you mentioned because, you know, you need more employees or you need more space to do the responsibility jobs, the job that you do. But yet under power, it still stays the same from FY25. So if you're getting more office space, then why aren't you increased your power bill?
The power bill is only the power bill for the building at PT. The rent at ITC already includes power.
I see. Okay, that explains it. So you're looking at increasing, the rent increasing is at ITC at 851,424, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The other question I've had, where's my other questions? Okay. The system, the FMIS system, is everyone already hooked up to that?
You don't need to be hooked up. It's in the, you just need
program?
a
Is everybody on it, and is it working well?
It's working.
It's working, but is it working well?
Yes.
Has there been any delays in processing of payroll or anything because of any issues with the system?
No, payroll is produced on time. As the CFO said, we still got some agencies on the old system, and we are pushing them as hard as we can to move to the new system.
Okay, and the amount that, of course, substantially have gone down from 7 million now to 3 million plus for the system. Next year, is it going to be the same thing, about 3 million? Are we expecting that for how many years moving forward?
I think next year it goes down to over 2 million.
Okay, so it's a gradual decline?
Yes.
Okay, on this one. Okay, recently, you know, there was a decision made in the court regarding signatures for the governor. This has to do with, you know, procurement contracts, and this has to do also with purchase orders. And based on Judge Ariarte's findings that, you know, based on Guam GCA 22601 and 22602, that anything is whatever nature, quote, whenever nature is what she used for contracts. So thousands of contracts have gone into your office. Mr. Burns, do you plan on having the governor sign every single contract and procurement contract and purchase order moving forward?
Senator, I hope you'll understand if I don't get too far into that, because it's still the subject of a legal action.
Yeah, but the order and decision came out already, and it's public, you know, so it's not something you can't talk about. I'm just asking a simple question. Is DOA required now, moving forward, every contract and every procurement to be signed? And what happens to those contracts that have not been signed in the past, or procurements? Can these individuals actually come and, you know, renege on their agreement because it wasn't signed properly based on the judge's findings?
Respectfully, all that came out of the court so far was a preliminary injunction. The case is still ongoing, and I am very reluctant to go into any detail on that.
Okay, no detail needed. Just, are you going to have every contract signed in procurement moving forward?
I need to get legal advice on that as to whether it's necessary or not.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, well, I'll bring it up because, you know, it's also interfering in some other areas. It will have great effect in interfering in a lot of these agencies who are trying to get procurements through and contracts being needing to be signed. So, by the way, does Gov Guam have a contract for Bank of Guam for general banking services?
No.
They don't. They don't have a contract?
They don't have a contract.
Okay. Do they have one for the credit card service contract?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay. Could I get a copy of that too when you get a chance, if you can send it to me? Who signed that contract, by the way, the one for the credit card? Was it the governor that signed it?
Well, if there's a contract, the governor will have signed it.
Yeah,
yes.
But isn't there a conflict in interest in that?
Well, in that case, I mean, in all those cases of conflict, the lieutenant governor signs.
So he most likely signed it.
Most likely.
Okay, I'll get a copy of that contract. So other than that, payroll has not payroll, I already talked about that. General pay plan adjustments, what is the status on that?
In what respect?
Well, in respect of, is it, are you having any issues moving forward, adjusting these pay plans in a timely manner, or any concerns? Just any concerns, because this was brought in the news in 2024, and sometimes agencies, they still haven't corrected issues that they have, and it's still lingering. So just checking if the Guam pay plan adjustments have been
generally, we're up, we're up to date with the general pay plan. All those accumulated merit bonuses that were accumulated from prior years, we've paid out all that we have. Occasionally, like we get one or two slipping through occasionally, but that's not significant.
Okay. What about any lapses? Will you have any lapses for, are you anticipating any lapses for FY24, and what lapses did you have in FY25? Have you anticipating any lapses in FY25, and did you receive any lapses or have any lapses in FY24?
That's generally a question for BBMR, who monitor the lapses and not lapses. There was a surplus for fiscal 24. We haven't been able to establish what it exactly is yet because of GDOA, as I mentioned before. But that indicates that in areas there must be lapses. But that's a question which I would respectfully ask you to ask BBMR.
Okay, so you don't know if you had any lapses for FY24 is what you're saying? For you?
No.
Your particular agency?
You mean for DOA?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
this
DOA.
is DOA,
well,
right?
Yes,
I'm in the right room, right?
Well,
okay.
We work for the whole government. So. We did have some underspends. We're not an agency that's allowed to carry forward our obligations, so they disappeared at the end of the year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity.
Just want to see, and also I'd like to welcome Senator Perez. Senator Barnett, you're next.
Mr. Chair, Mananasidos to the people of Guam watching, and good morning, Mr. Byrne and Mrs. Rivers and Ms. Kittiquah. Thank you for your presentation. I just had some questions on the Guam Financial Management Information System. Mrs. Rivers, in your presentation, you said that one of the priorities for this upcoming fiscal year is better utilization of the Guam Financial Management Information System with focus on resolving issues flagged via user service requests and implement process improvements. You also said that the agency has received some constructive feedback. I think the term is constructive criticism. And so if you could just elaborate on that information. It's only a sentence, so.
That's fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, so obviously the GFMIS has, obviously when we implemented it, had obviously created a lot of, and implementing a new system does come with challenges, and working with the groups and the end users to understand those challenges. We are also the end users as well ourselves. So as we utilize the system, we identify certain shortfalls that helps us improve our management of our financials. So I guess some of the reoccurring queries that we get, that we raise service requests is to do with availability, or when we migrate financials or accounts from the old system to the new system, we need to ensure the mappings are correct. For example, whatever the accounts that we're capturing appropriations in the old system, we need to make sure that the correct account is established in the new system to capture the same details. And it's a work in progress. I did mention in one of the slides that one of the biggest focus that we were working on is a data cleanse, cleaning the data that we moved from the AS400 to 365, which includes over 4,900 accounts. And so the task in trying to ensure that the mapping is correctly done and it's correctly migrating the correct information, and the correct information is then captured is one of the, in the accounting side. In terms of the other users, some of the queries that we do receive is to do with navigating the system, understanding where the balances are recorded, and access to the system itself, uploading work requests through the system, i.e. invoices. We've heard the feedback, and we've started meetings with the different agencies, the large agencies, in terms of improving the turnaround time of processing payments. We have worked on providing extending access to upload invoices from the agency side. And so when we implemented the system, that access wasn't available to the agencies. With the concerns that they flagged in a delay in getting the invoices, we've gone down that path of putting those trainings in place. So those are some of the issues that payroll also, that came up a number of cases when we first implemented, the delay in getting the deductions to the banks, which impacted employees, obviously their loans and stuff. So we've worked to improve that in terms of making sure when the payroll is processed, the deductions are sent to the banks within the time frame. We had some issues last year. We've improved, and we've been able to remit the deductions at least prior to the due date, before or within the due dates. There are still some minor things we're working on to try and improve, but the biggest concern we had last year or last few months was to do with meeting timelines for deductions, for employee deductions. We have improved. We haven't seen a lot of escalations or none so far, but if there are out there, we will continue to work on. But those are the key concerns that we received.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Rivers. You know, some of the concerns I received aren't necessarily relative to line agency employees being able to navigate the new system. I know that Mr. Byrne in his testimony, and this is just my estimation, kind of threw the agency employees under the bus, but I know of agencies where you have very seasoned, very tenured, very experienced employees who are very knowledgeable about invoice submission and dealing with vendors. And I hear back from these agencies, and these are agencies that have been dealing with particular vendors for a long time. I hear back from them, oh, the vendor's going to cut the service because we can't get payment out of DOA. So how do you address those types of instances, which it seems like we have $4 million worth of those types of things?
So I guess as I sort of referenced earlier, we've heard the feedback. We've engaged with like the MCOG group, the Department of Health. We have separate sessions now with their key staff sitting with our team to work through the extending the access to what we call the X-Flow, where they can directly upload the invoices themselves instead of sending the invoices to the inbox, which is, we receive over 100 invoices in one day from one agency if there's a mad rush, which is close to the end of the financial year. So we're trying to work with the agencies. We understand completely the concerns they have, and hence the reason why we're doing our best to engage and work on granting access, but also pushing through solutions on some of the issues that they're raising. And I know it's not perfect yet. We will get there with the support of the agencies, and I do myself closely working with the team. We do look at the outstanding and the aging invoices on a regular basis. So we're continuing to work, and that's the challenge and a priority over the next few years as we get used to the new system.
So we have no buses at DOA. The two biggest problems we had in implementing this new system was, one, getting the information out of the old system. Not surprising, because the old system was a kind of flat system, whereas this is a relationship system. So the requirements to extract the information and make it fit into the new system absorbed a lot of the effort from our vendor. And that took time. The second problem we have with the new system is agencies, or not people, or it's not really their fault, but they've only experienced one system in the past. So they strive to do things in the way that they were forced to use under the old system, whereas the new system actually allows them much more freedom to operate and is more of an accounting system, and that just takes time for people to get used to it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Byrne. I know you're talking up the financial management information system, but at the end of the day, still not able to pay the bills on time. And this is just what I hear from the agencies. And it is concerning because in this particular agency, which they asked me not to mention because they're worried that it's going to lead to further delays, we're talking about vendors that have to do with like public notices and things like that. And so something as simple as sending out a public notice and you get a message back from whatever media entity that, oh, sorry, your credit's no good here. And come to find out it's whether it's the employees not understanding the system or the backup of invoices, because we've had you in here before, and I remember there was a point in early last year where you had said you had over 1,000, I believe it was like 30,000 active invoices to deal with. So that's just my concern that I'm sharing with the employees. From the employees.
Please, can I put it in context? $4 million worth of outstanding invoices is really, really small. And that's just, the weekly turnover of invoices. We're not going to pay every invoice as soon as you get it. You accumulate invoices and pay a batch of invoices.
So we paid $7 million, and then now for this fiscal year, it's 3.8. How much of the total cost, which has been reported in the media, the total cost of this management system is $31 million? Is that correct?
That's the contract value, yes.
Is that inclusive of all the different upgrades that are required?
We've had 2 change orders and 2 that have change orders that were required afterwards because of new circumstances. All of that is less than 100,000.
So this amount that we're seeing in the budget is just chipping away at the $31 million
yes.
total. Okay.
Yes.
So one of my colleagues in here was talking about the rush to migrate to the new system. Why can't you just unplug the old one and use the new one? What's still in that AS400?
As I was explaining, Senator, there's 2 areas. One is the revenue system that was not contemplated by the contract that we now wish to upgrade to the new system.
How much would that upgrade be?
We don't know yet. We're still trying to research that. And the second one is the PH Pro system, which uses it's a public health system. We get information out of it, but it's up to public health to do that. And as we explained, we're working with agencies quickly to move them on the payroll side, which there are 8 agencies, you told me, that still use the old payroll system because they feel comfortable with it. And we've worked with them not to force them onto the new system until they feel comfortable.
How is this new system procured?
It was a competitive bid.
For this new system?
Yes.
There's a quote in the media, March of 2024. The quote reads, "The first few months are rocky. I'm confident in a few months, everything will be very optimum and you'll be seeing a lot of performance times exceeded." That was Lieutenant Governor said that a year ago. Is that accurate today in 2025? Are we seeing performance times exceeded? And because it kind of sounds like we still have a lot of issues with the system.
Well, I would say yes. Compared with the old system, we have exceeded performance times.
I mean, when you compare the new system to itself a year ago, it also seems like you're making a little progress.
It must have done because we reduced the payables by 90%. So we must have made some progress.
Mm-hmm. As we discussed some of the measures before the body, particularly the business privilege tax rollback, one of the talking points of proponents for this issue is the raises, right? They talk about raises, specifically the raises given to the cabinet members. And I know the media has reported on these $10,000 raises. In some cases, you've gotten a $10,000 raise. I know the chief of staff has also seen a significant increase, and then also had his brother-in-law hired over at your department. But when the media asked for the metric for this, because you have classified employees, there's a metric that they measure against. I don't believe one was provided. So are you able to say what that metric is? Is it just willy-nilly? The governor likes you, you get 10 grand. If she doesn't, you get 2 grand, 3 grand?
Well, are you asking about the cabinet members' salaries?
Yes, sir. Yes,
well, just let me point out that's not a DOA budget item. So
you process those.
Yes, of course, but it's not a DOA budget item. I just want to be absolutely clear, right? The governor has the authority to set, and she doesn't necessarily discuss with me, to set the salaries of the cabinet members. And we get the authorization to pay those amounts, and those are the amounts that we pay.
Yeah, and then you have the personnel services administrator and all your people sign off on it. And you're doing that just based on the governor's authority to increase these unclassified employees' salaries?
The governor's signature is on there. I feel comfortable.
Okay. Good morning, Mrs. Kidawat. Morning. How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay. I really appreciate what you said about not rubber stamping the procurements. I think a lot of times with the procurement law, although people say it's got its issues, I find that they run into problems when they're trying to party their procurement system. So I greatly appreciate you stating for the record that you don't rubber stamp any procurements. But I wanted to ask, because it kind of begs the question when you say something like that on the record, are you ever pressured to push specific procurements through?
Oh, no. When I say I don't rubber stamp, it's sometimes when a requisition comes in, it doesn't mean it's always ready really for a purchase order.
Right.
There are some documents that are missing that need to be in compliant with the Guam procurement law and the procurement regulations, or it's something very technical that GSA wasn't involved in the planning process, and so it's trying to understand whether this requisition is really going to get the agencies what they need really to perform their functions. So I've never received any pressure to sign any purchase orders or contract anything not in compliance with law.
Was GSA involved in the procurement of the new financial management information system?
No, it was a request for proposal under the Department of Administration.
Yeah, can you speak to just, with your expertise in procurement, a lot of the issues that we're seeing after the fact with the financial management information system, would these have flown if GSA had been involved in the procurement?
I don't think I can say yes or no, because I know the person that was doing the administration of the procurement had all their 4 modules. So I don't want to say that if GSA was involved, it would have been different, because we are both module trained for all 4 procurement modules.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm not trying to turn this into an oversight hearing on the financial management information system, which I would absolutely welcome. I mean, since the previous term, we've received concerns then, we're receiving the same concerns now, but we're not really big on the oversight hearings in this new legislature. But I would just state that for the record, that I think it warrants a deeper discussion. Sir?
But sir, it would be helpful if we have a concern to tell us, because we can address it.
I am telling you.
The agency you're talking about, whichever it is, I think is mistaken, because we're not going to take revenge on anybody. If there's an issue, we want to address it.
And I'm not accusing you of saying you're going to take revenge on people, but I think it's very commonplace in the government of Guam where employees feel and worry about retaliation or threats, and this is just for stating facts to senators or just anybody in general. I know you know better than that.
Not from me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Silas Masi.
Silas Masi, and to address your comment on oversight. A lot of times oversight is a little bit overused. We did an informational briefing whereby we had a detailed presentation by Department of Administration on the current status of the FMIS. That is why in this current slide presentation from the panel, they updated us in terms of the current and still ongoing concerns. Oversights are usually used when you contemplate some sort of legislation where you would be changing maybe the structure of the organization or the like. I know some other senators feel as though it's a different purpose, but truth be told, informational briefings are really much more appropriate when you're trying to get updates on systems and information. This time, Senator Chalai, you're recognized.
Thank you. I want to start off with when the chair asked if your budget was within the governor's cap, you said it was, but the spreadsheet says that it's 888,000 above the governor's request. So how do you mean that it's within her cap?
Could you tell me what you're looking at?
I'm looking at this spreadsheet. I don't know if it came from OFB, but on the variance, FY26 agency request versus governor's request, the total is 888,000.
I've seen this for the first time this morning. I really don't know where the numbers come from.
Okay, actually now I'm thinking it's because these things on the bottom are all those pass-through special lines that we put into the budget for additional items.
Correct.
Like
I addressed that from the onset, and also the notes on the bottom in red will indicate where the 24 goes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If I could answer that now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
The governor's executive budget request is for the general fund and for certain special funds, and these are out, as I think the chairman was saying, these are outside that limit.
All right, well, it does show amounts that the governor had requested, right? But still a variance. The self-insurance, is this amount correct? What does that mean? What does this amount under self-insurance mean, 686? Who is that for? Well, it says Division of Accounts, self-insured, the first line.
Oh. I don't know. I'd have to look at these numbers, Senator, to answer your question properly, and I will do so.
Oh. All right, well, can you just talk about the self-insurance contract? What are the changes then? What are the changes in costs?
Yes, again, with the, with the morning that we're in the middle of negotiations, but we are in the middle of negotiations for a TPA to administer the self-insured contract for fiscal 26. Those negotiations are ongoing. We haven't received the best and final offer yet from those bidders. We have received some information which we are evaluating to determine what the expected claims are going to be. I think the last time you asked me, our estimate, but this is not a refined number yet, so our estimate was something just under 200 million. I think the last number I saw at was like 190 million.
That's for the government share?
Government-wide. No, that's the total cost, government-wide.
All right, but government share?
No,
Employers.
that's the total cost.
Total cost.
Yeah.
What about for the third-party administrators? You're entering, it says, a multi-year contract?
It isn't, because legislation doesn't allow us to do that. We did ask for a bill to have a 3-year contract, and there are several reasons for that, including the fact that we want to have a direct contract with a pharmacy benefit manager, because as I mentioned, pharmacy costs are a growing element of our medical costs. But no pharmacy benefit manager will enter into a 1-year contract. So that's one of the reasons why we asked for a 3-year contract.
But that would have to be for the next fiscal year because your renegotiations must end soon, isn't that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it won't affect fiscal 26.
Okay.
No, it's too late.
All right, I just was asking because it's on this list. And then, all right, the claims fund was reduced from 100,000 to 75,000 in FY25. Is the 75,000 enough? What have you seen under the claims?
I think we'd sent out a report. I think it was like 45,000 year to date.
So it's more than enough
At this
so
moment.
far?
Yes.
So far. Are you aware of outstanding claims that will exceed that amount?
Not of government claims, no.
Okay. And Adriana, Ms. Kittico, can I ask you, the list says the re-centralization of procurement is, what does that mean? Because we're supposed to have a centralized procurement system.
We always did have a centralized. When I say re-centralization, when I became the acting chief procurement officer, because of the volume that was coming into the General Services Agency, my predecessor had decentralized part of the procurement process, meaning that if there was a requisition that was under the small purchase threshold, agencies were able to conduct the procurement process, such as the request for quote process. And then they would submit it into GSA, and the Chief Procurement Officer would review and sign the purchase order based on the assessment by the agencies. And so when I came in the middle of the fiscal year, we continued that process because I didn't want to just change it to all the agencies. But I did find some compliance matters with that. And so once fiscal year 2025 was coming about, I had decentralized that process. So I took it back, and it's only the General Services Agency buyers that are properly trained to conduct procurement that can process these requisitions.
Right. Do you believe that causes more consistency in our procurement?
Yes, so it will be more consistent. It is more consistent now. And so I don't blame the agencies for the way they were doing it when I did come in, because sometimes the training is different. The module training, it does wonders, but sometimes when you're a properly trained buyer, you're a procurement professional, there are factors that maybe the module training didn't really get to that you would get if you're a developed buyer. And so,
okay. And are they the buyers are the ones who are creating the specs?
So the agencies create the specs in the beginning, part of their market research, and when they submit it into the buyers, what the buyers do is they'll look at your specifications and ensure that it is open for competition, but also that it does meet your needs. So if there is a spec that might be lacking, they will contact the agency and have a conversation on what we can do to improve the spec so we get what they need.
All right, because my interpretation, just my own, that it's the specs that really make us either be subject to challenge or not if we don't get that right at that stage. So I'm glad that you're closely overseeing that.
Yes, I would support that, and it came up at that meeting we had with the Chamber of Commerce last week.
What?
The criticality of the specs.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brink, can you just complete, you were talking about the 4 separate agencies that you wait for or that you obtain data that has to be submitted into the FY23 audit, GDOE, the legislature, what were the other 2?
The public defender and the judiciary.
Thank you. What exactly is the issue with GDOE? What is causing the delay? Because they have personnel there, and is it because of the federal funds they're waiting for responses? What is it? Well,
I can't give you a really definitive answer because I don't know yet, because we haven't got a hold of the figures. From what I hear from the auditors is it is principally and I guess I would have to look at this myself to validate this, but it's principally not knowing whether an expenditure or revenue is a local expenditure or revenue or a federal expenditure or revenue. And that has something to do with the accounting system. And I'd really like to be able to answer you more clearly, because that would be the path to resolving it, but I don't have the information yet.
Maybe they're trying to fit things under the federal, right? Like the salaries and the raises that they did before, and now.
Right, and the background to all this, of course, is an uncertainty in DC that they thought they were certain, and now things, in their view, have changed, right? But as I say, I'm not sure whether that's real or not unreal at this moment.
Just real quick on this, though, because this is important. I mean, it's a snapshot in time. It's the trial balance that they're not being able to reconcile. And that's huge. I mean, you can't start unless you have a starting point. And this is what the auditors pointed out.
Yes.
Is that they have a system, that has their all of their information. It's getting to their trial balance. That's a reconciliation.
From what again, it's not really clear to me, but yes, you're right. The trial balance is the gateway to the audit. But when you start to look in the content of those balances, that appears to be the issue. And I don't know what's in those balances.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. On your budget request, these are two minor items where it says vacancies, it says vacant, and then parentheses, it says vice, colon, and then a name, parentheses. What does that mean?
I'm not really keen on that, but it's been the practice for a long time. It means that that person previously occupied that position.
All right, thank you. Still vacant. And you're trying to fill at least 17 more vacancies this fiscal year? 2 in procurement?
2 in procurement. I think 7 in HR and 3 in accounting. Yeah.
All right, so the procurement, you've explained what those increased personnel is going to do for us. The HR 7, that's a lot. So did we lose those people, and we need to? These are vacancies to be filled, or new positions you're adding on?
No, losing. We didn't lose. We had 3 retirements, and we had 2 people move to. I think 2, maybe 1 or 2 to different agencies.
Yes.
And we had some ongoing vacancies because some of those relate to prior years. That may have been vacant for more than a year.
All right. Is that, would you say, the cause of delays in hiring that the agencies complain about?
It certainly doesn't help if you don't have the people to do the work. The new system, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to see this part of it, but the GG1 process, you can see exactly where each authorization is. And so what used to take like 3 weeks, and nobody knew where the piece of paper was, now takes 4 days to go through the system. So now we have a whole lot of people that are ready to be recruited, and so now we've recognized a bottleneck in the recruiting department, and we're working to fix that.
All right. That will be done soon?
Well, yes, absolutely.
All right.
It's with HR, it's like heal thyself, right?
All right. There's another item in your budget that says bank fees, 21,907, but it's under a functional area. What is that?
Well, it perhaps shouldn't. Oh, these bank fees? I'm looking at this sheet. Am I looking?
It's not on that sheet. It's in your request.
Oh, it's in your PowerPoint. It's in your PowerPoint.
I got this from for today. Let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry. On there. Yeah, we have some minor bank fees that we have to pay. Some of them relate to bond accounts, and some of them relate to the administration of our operating accounts.
You mean like regular monthly bank fees that all your accounts
Yes,
have to pay?
but some of them are the bond
Oh, bond.
fees.
Okay, thank you. Under the health insurance contract, if I remember correctly, they allowed for the government of Guam to maybe overrule the TPA once in a while, if necessary. Has that happened, and how often?
Seldom. It's not really overruling them because it's our policy, not theirs. What we've undertaken to do with the TPAs is to adhere to their general policies. But from time to time, emergencies occur, and I can only think at the moment of 3 during this current year, where we've said to them, you need to do something in a different way. Mostly, it relates to really serious accidents or traumas, and sometimes that requires a medical flight, which, it's a matter of life or death.
So they've been denying those, and you've been actually able to cover the medical flights?
It's not in their policy.
Yeah.
They pay 50%, but 50% is of a very large number.
Yes.
So we've, we want to preserve life. Right?
All right. Are there any other issues that have come up, for example, cancer medicine coverage?
The perennial things that come up was, first of all, at the end of last year, there was a pharmaceutical shortage nationally, and that impacted us because some of the pharmacies didn't have the regular drugs that people were used to. And sometimes that meant that we had to, in order to fulfill their prescriptions, the pharmacies used more expensive drugs. That shortage now has disappeared, and we're back to a regular process. But that's a good example of unexpected things that happen.
Okay, thank you. You just talked briefly about you had considered bulk purchase of Government of Guam office space. Did you ever consider lease to own? Because I heard that idea in another hearing. And what is the status of the Central Magaʹhågan Government of Guam building? Do you know?
The Hessler Place building?
No, they were supposed to build a Government of Guam office building down in Magaʹhågan for several agencies.
Okay, well, yes, HROA's long-term mandate is to do that, but it hasn't been done. So we are faced with leasing space, at least for the, unless we find another solution for the foreseeable future. Up to now, this has been done agency by agency, which isn't a very efficient way of doing it. Now we have the property services manager at DOA. We're looking at doing it in bigger chunks so that we don't spend a whole lot of time, or GSA doesn't spend a whole lot of time dealing with individual small leases. And he started in December, so we're just starting down, that track in order to maximize. If we can negotiate with landlords for bigger spaces, theoretically that should be cheaper rents.
All right. So this is a new position. Who is that?
Pete Uggan.
Pardon?
Pete Uggan.
Pete
It's
Uggan.
a new position. He started in December.
Okay, great. Is lease to own one of your considerations?
Yes, it should be.
Oh.
I don't think we've looked at it, but it should be.
All right. I just want to confirm one thing in your role as in the Financial Review Committee for GMH. Did they receive the money for the labor and delivery appropriation, or are they having issues in getting that money or not?
Well, they haven't. I don't actually remember because we've given them so much money over the last, and you know, that's fine. If they need the money, we should give it to them. I don't recall the individual slices, but I'll let you know.
All right. And then I know that they have their own issues in using it, getting bids, but I just want to make sure whether they're actually not being denied that money. The last thing is just on the salary of cabinet members. That is not pursuant to a pay plan? No. I thought there was a director's pay plan. No, I didn't look, but...
there is an executive pay plan.
Yes.
And the recipients, the cabinet members are fitted into the appropriate slotting, but it's dependent on the governor.
To fit the person into a slot?
Effectively,
on that
yes.
plan. I see. Okay, so when they say raises, it's really a movement into a different slot?
It might be. I don't think there were two, at the last one, I don't think there were, some people, not all cabinet members actually got an increase, but it was, so there were only a few movements to my recollection.
All right. I just want to know if that pay plan is still effective or not.
Yes, there's an executive pay plan. It hasn't been reviewed like the others, probably should be.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for all your work. And to Jusmasi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Jusmasi, Senator Chalayi. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to Director Byrne, Teresa Rivers, and Adriana. I just want to thank DOA for their hard work. I know you guys do a lot. So some questions in regards to the Guam Community Health Center. So that's something that wasn't in last budget, but is in this budget as a pass-through. Can you explain what that's about?
Yes, and thank you for your kind words. We have there's a DOA employee in the health center. It's paid for the person, it's actually, the position is currently vacant because the occupant left, but it's paid for by the health center, but is an accounting position. So that's why it's been treated as a pass-through.
And so the health center, do they provide services to DPHSS? Is that what this is about?
It's accounting for the health center.
Okay.
So they do things like the financial reporting to the board, the billing, the Medicare billing, that kind of activity.
Okay. All right. And then, let's see what else. Yeah, a lot of questions were asked. In regards to the FMIS system, so to what extent does it relieve personnel responsibilities, if any?
Can I ask Ms. Rivers to at least address that?
Okay, thank you.
If you're, I guess the question is, when do we see automation kicks in and reduces resourcing? Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah, so to some extent, can automation help with the workload?
Absolutely.
And to what extent can that, yeah,
Yes.
basically that's the question.
So the goal, I mean, when the system works as it should, and we can see that it's 90% there, we definitely should be able to see capacity released, and we can redirect those resources to reviewing our procedures and other stuff. But right now, we're still working through getting used to the system and, supporting agencies resolve some of the challenges we're facing. But yes, most definitely, once everything is in order, we should expect some capacity release in terms of, we could see a reduction in resources, but can be redirected to other key areas. Yes, sorry,
Okay.
wrong question, wrong answer to the question.
No,
Yes.
that's what I was going for, because I know some of the issues or concerns by some, what I hear from constituents is that the objectivity, perhaps, of handling applicants. And so with automation, do you see that as an improvement in the system?
We can certainly, we've seen that already in, say, for example, the payroll process. It's been, we see the paperless no longer a huge factor. The team, if our CPO was here, he could testify to that in terms of the reduction in the paper. Therefore, it reduces the amount of time that they need to gather the paper input. Everything is in the system. So, yes, we see the automation as an improved aspect to getting our work done. Yes.
What about the ranking of applicants? Because that's some of the things we hear, that certain applicants get an advantage because of the perhaps interventions that take place.
I will actually defer that response to the director.
The ranking of applicants isn't in the FMIS system at present. It was excluded. We are now actually, it's one of the things that changes we're looking at, is actually incorporating it more closely into the system. It's an old system too. I've been asking quite a lot of questions about it lately because I'm not sure it always, I'm not sure it always gives the right result. For instance, somebody who's high ranked doesn't get selected. That raises a question in my mind, and we're looking at it.
Absolutely, I hear that quite a bit, and it's concerning. And anything you can do to rectify that, I appreciate that.
Yes, we are.
The other thing I see is the increase in contractual services, and I think a big part of it is the actuarial consultant. And can you explain why such an increase in cost?
Well, I think I did address this to some extent, but actuaries are expensive to begin with. They're highly qualified people, so their cost went up the same as everybody else. But we are asking them to do additional tasks, like I mentioned, the feasibility of paying for Medicare Part D, because that reduces the pharmacy cost, but we have to deal with the deductible that each of the subscribers has to pay, because you have to reach a deductible of $2,000 before Medicare takes over and pays for the actual drugs. So that's an actuarial thing that we've asked them to look at. And also, we mentioned the need to have a pharmacy benefit manager. They have to validate the rebates that we get. And we're asking them to audit some of the old contracts too.
Okay, so basically it's an increased scope of work, therefore
Yes.
increase in cost.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is timing. So unfortunately, the insurance contract happens after the budget. And then we call upon the agencies to absorb the cost within their appropriated levels. I know you were requesting for 3-year contracts, which can also lower the cost. What about timing? Can anything be done with the timing?
We're trying very hard to get the whole thing done by the end of July this year. We can't make something that's inherently complex simple, but I'm very fortunate to have a negotiating team currently who are really working really hard and always turn up at the meetings. So we're working hard to get the report to the governor by the end of July. And we actually have a schedule that does that at the moment. We're working hard to adhere to it.
Okay, another timing issue is the federal fiscal cycle versus the local fiscal cycle. And so it puts a bind on a lot of agencies when it comes to procurement. How can we assist these agencies so that they're not put under this pressure and the risk of leaving money on the table is decreased? I know we had this discussion before when there was an informational hearing with the public auditor, but what steps can DOA take, or what recommendations that you can make to help these agencies?
Well, I'm going to ask, if I may, in a minute, Ms. Rivers, to talk about the grants part of the FMIS system. But that wouldn't work if we don't get people putting information into it. The first issue we sometimes have, for big grants like Medicaid, we don't always get the grant on October 1st. Sometimes we get it October 16th or whatever, and so there's inherently a federal delay in that, and there's little we can do about that except try to catch up. For multi-year grants, there is absolutely no reason why agencies shouldn't continue to spend, for the 2-year grants that we get, continue to spend those multi-year grants as we go through. As I indicated before, there's a tendency to be conservative and not spend until you get towards the end of the grant for fear of overcommitting. And that's just experience that agencies and DOA and BBMR have to get to to manage those grants efficiently so that doesn't happen. Because when it does, and it doesn't happen to everything, but when it does, then GSA gets a backlog of procurements to do in a very short period of time. We do try and accommodate agencies. There are some agencies that have asked us to keep procurement open beyond our normal period, and I think in almost every case we have, right? Yeah.
Is it because of the reliance on small purchases, or can we basically direct them more towards IDIQs? I mean, is this something that would help?
It's generally for the more complex, larger contracts that are the subject of these grants. I didn't mention, but perhaps we should, that we have now inventory and tender, so that should help for the really small purchases because tender's available. Perhaps you'd like to talk about that.
So some of the things that we did this fiscal year is we did do a lot of indefinite quantity bids. One of them, and I know it's been a concern, is our government store. And so I just signed a contract for office and janitorial supplies, and a circular will be forthcoming to the agencies about what types of supplies are there at TENDA, so they won't need to go through a tedious procurement process, and they can just purchase it directly from our TENDA.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, definitely moving the direction of bulk purchasing for shared needs. And let's see. I think those are my questions. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Just a question that came in before I close. Director Byrne, sorry, I pulled it up real quick here. It's regarding government buildings. The question was, Mr. Byrne, talk about new building, government purchased. Guam Behavioral Health and DPHSS say that they're paying for the utilities for the new assisted living facility in Tumuning and new women's children homeless shelter in Anigua. Can you address that?
Who's paying the utilities?
So Guam Behavioral Health and DPHSS say they're paying for utilities for the new assisted living facility in Tumuning and the new women's and children homeless shelter in Anigua.
Well, to my knowledge, that the Anigua shelter, we're paying the utilities at the moment, but it's not open yet, so the utilities, it's not like there's a whole lot of utilities. For the assisted living, well, by the assisted living, they mean the step-down facility in Tumuning.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still being, it's still under construction, so the contractor is still paying the utilities for that. It's almost done, and when it is, the occupant will pay the utilities.
Okay, we'll do a follow-up if there's any need for us to email you on this concern that came in, so I appreciate that. Director and the team, I appreciate your presence here today and your presentation. I'll put this on the record. Andy, they don't want you to leave, but I know you have a bright future no matter where you go. But thank you for the work that you've done. Like I said, I've gotten such great feedback in terms of GSA and the like. What I wanted to mention again, perhaps Director Byrne, on our maybe before or on our next presentation by the public auditor for highlights, we will go once again over, I think we need to get a benchmark on the FMIS. And you know, Director Byrne, I just think that you do continue to, and I remember this as a director, field questions, you know, that are sent to senators, and I get it, you know, but I really think maybe on the next schedule of this, invite the directors if they want to come down and, you know, jump up on the table or step up to the table, excuse me, jump on the table, maybe they will if they're upset. But you know, maybe that's what we'll do is you can send out an invitation, we'll send out an invitation as well if they want to come down and discuss their specific issues. I do know that when I met with the financial division as well as HR, they did mention that, you know, it can be a little bit of both, but generally it's a communication issue in terms of them needing to reach out to DOA for the additional technical assistance. And if you want to address that real quick, but I think that might be the best format in the next informational.
Certainly, Senator, and we might consider actually setting it up here so that we can demonstrate what it is. Since it's in the cloud, we can do it anywhere.
I think that would be a great presentation, and like I said, you know, we'll have that as an open invitation. It's high public, you know, it's of high public interest, and it's been bantered about. So during this term, I want to stay on it. But like I said, I think it's better when we have a constructive conversation where, you know, we're talking about how it's working and how it's going to get there. I know that you've continued to improve the team, so I appreciate your efforts. So with that, we will now conclude this morning's budget hearing on 44-38 COR, that is the bill, relative to the budget and the Department of Administration. The committee will continue to accept written testimony on the bill within 7 calendar days from today, which can be addressed to myself, Senator Christopher M. Dueñas, as chairman of the committee, and mailed to 163 West Chalansantapapa, Magaʹhågan, 9691010. You may also send your questions to my email at senator.dueñas@guamlegislature.gov. This morning's budget hearing is now adjourned, and the time is 11:23. Situus Masi, we are in adjournment.
Thank you, Chairman.